Bort? Oh, come on, Bort?
Mommy, buy me a license plate!
No, come along, Bort.
Are you talking to me?
No, my son is also named Bort.
The Bort Experience. Hello, and welcome to The Bort Experience, a new podcast hosted by yours truly, Cody Galat. We are right now casting on the New News Network YouTube channel, and normally you're probably used to this channel being about parody videos and news stories and reviews, and we're going to do something a little bit different. So I was super inspired by a recent Simpsons book that I got to listen to called Stupid TV Be More Funny, How the Golden Era of The Simpsons Changed Television in America Forever by Alan Siegel. It's a fantastic book. And a little background on me. I grew up in the 90s, 34 years old, and I would watch Simpsons in syndication, and as a kid, I didn't really understand the concept of starting a show from the beginning to end. You just kind of watched it when it came on. And at least where I lived in my local station, it would come on at 4 to 4:30. So every time I got home from school, I would watch an episode, enjoy the couch gag, enjoy the characters. And I kind of fell off after 2007, when the movie came out. And I watched the movie. I'm pretty sure I saw it in theaters, if I remember correctly. But yeah, that was kind of like the last kind of really big thing that I saw of the series. And now I think they're on season 34. There's almost 800 episodes, and I haven't really thought about The Simpsons too much. As you can see from behind me, I used to have the toys, a couple of the DVD box sets, but it kind of fell off my radar, moved on. I think also it was kind of the time in my life where I was in high school, focusing on sports, getting into college and stuff like that. So I kind of just fell off. And this book recently came out, and how I would describe this book is, if you like books like Console Wars or any of the work by Jason Schreier, where it kind of gives you kind of like a history, but it's kind of like a biography as well of the different creators of the subject matter, then this book is fantastic, and you would really like it, especially if you were a fan of the kind of the first 10 seasons of The Simpsons, which I think many fans are. So the goal of this podcast is we're going to dive into each episode once a week. So I think I did quick math. It'd take me probably like 15 years just to catch up, but it's kind of part of the journey, right? And I want to kind of experience the show in a different way, where I kind of start from the beginning, watch each episode. It's all on Disney Plus now. So that's kind of fantastic. And then kind of just go from there with, hey, right now my favorite character is Homer, and it always has been. But I've seen people talk like, hey, Lisa's actually their favorite character, or even Bart. So, or Maggie and Marge and all these other side characters. So I'm kind of like really excited, and I just want to kind of jump into this journey. The goal is to have new episodes out on Mondays, Monday mornings, 9 a.m. And that's kind of like the goal I'm setting for myself. I don't get paid to do any of this. It's all for fun. And right now I'm currently at 63 subscribers at the New News Network channel. I thank everyone who's subscribed to me, and my goal is to have 100 subscribers by the end of the year. And hopefully this adding on as a playlist and a podcast under the channel network will help do that. I'm also going to put it on Spotify, and then if there's like hunger enough for it, I'll try to get it on the other services as well. But I just think for ease of sake, YouTube's kind of the easiest for me. It's just upload the video, and then Spotify makes it kind of easy for creators to upload. And I believe I can upload a video there where you can either listen to it as a video format or an audio, so kind of get the best of both worlds. So the very first episode that we'll be doing is Simpsons Roasting on an Open Fire. And I want to kind of give it like an overview of the episode. So if you haven't watched it, you can watch it along with me, or if you haven't, that's fine. We'll kind of give a quick overview. So the Simpsons Roasting on an Open Fire, also known as the Simpsons Christmas Special, was written by Mia Pond and directed by David Silverman. And the first full-length episode of The Simpsons to air, despite originally being the 8th episode produced for the season 1. So what that means is they came out with some episodes. They were working with a local, or not local, but like a smaller animation studio called, I believe it's Chapo. Correct me if, or sorry if that's not the correct name, but I think that's Chapo Studios, I believe is the name of the animation studio. And I think they saw some of the earlier episodes and they're like, oh, this doesn't look good. So when it came out in December, they said, hey, this let's air it a little bit out of order and do their Christmas special. And I think that was kind of a good decision, kind of like get their feet wet. A lot of people like Christmas special episodes. If you think about like Charlie Brown or, other kind of cartoons, there's that kind of Christmas vibe. So it kind of gets people like, hey, I'll check it out. What's this new show out? So I think that was a good decision by the creators of the show. And it originally aired on Fox Network in the United States, like I said, on December 17th, 1989. So technically this is a show of the 80s, very late 80s, last month. But I think most people that grew up in the 90s, either older millennials or maybe even a little bit younger, got to enjoy this show. In the episode, Homer discovers that he will not be getting a Christmas bonus, and thus the family has no money to buy Christmas presents. He decides to keep their financial troubles a secret and get a job as a shopping mall Santa, but later discovers that the job does not pay enough, $13 for all that work. Desperate for a miracle, Homer and Bart go to a dog racing track on Christmas Eve in hopes of earning some money. The episode was viewed approximately 13.4 million people, and it's originally airing and nominated for 2 Emmy Awards in 1990. So that's kind of like the basic of the episode, but I kind of wanted to dive a little bit deeper and kind of give you my thoughts. So I think even at the very early onset of the show, you kind of felt the heart of the characters. And they go over this a lot in the book. But even though it's animation, you still have to have the heart. Like, a lot of sitcoms have that kind of like heartfelt moments. And I think you feel that with the Homer character, Homer Simpson, in that, hey, this is Christmas. I want to provide for my family. How can I do that? And I don't want to disappoint them. So it's that kind of like, hey, I'm going to work and make sacrifices to try to help my family. And speaking of Homer, he, like I said, I haven't watched the show in a long time, but you can tell from the very beginning, even his voice sounds a little bit more gruffer. He's a little bit more angrier and a little bit more intelligent. So I think he actually becomes dumber throughout the show's run. And I think you can kind of tell, like, they're still trying to figure it out. And you notice this on a lot of shows like King of the Hill, Family Guy. They don't know what the characters are yet. And they're trying to figure that out and what works with the audience and what works with the scripts. So I think you can definitely tell that this is very early, and where they want the characters to be and go has not been fully established. But it's great to kind of see the first state and the first time we see them as a family. And the vibes I really get, and I don't know, because I think when I looked it up, the National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation came out that same month as the episode, but I'm assuming the episode was made or written way before, the animation came out and that movie came out. But there's a lot of similar vibes, and maybe there's other Christmas movies that I haven't seen that have like a very similar feel, but it feels very like similar in terms of like there's a scene where Homer does all this work to get the Christmas lights on, hooks it up, and then it kind of reminds me, and then you see Flanders, his neighbor, has this awesome display with a Santa talking mannequin or doll thing, or like, contraption, how like people have now with those blow ups, but it's like a more like a plastic one just saying ho ho ho, and Homer's is like a pathetic like one or two lights, and the rest of them are broken. And it reminded me, I don't know why, but first thought went into my head was National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, and just that kind of vibe of like, oh, always trying to keep up with my neighbors and appearances, and like, man, this sucks so bad. And it was just, really cool. And then one of the things that I thought was really interesting was, with the characters that we did see. And I kind of want to jump into a segment I want to call Citizens of Springfield. So in this segment, we're going to kind of dive in to what characters we see, what are our initial thoughts on those, and do we like the characters and how they change over time. And I think it'll be really interesting as we go through the episodes and the seasons to kind of see that their evolution. So of course we got the main family: Homer Simpson, Marge Simpson, Bart, Lisa, and Maggie. And at the end, Santa's little helper, which I consider him. And I forgot to mention Snowball too. Marge is writing a letter in the episode, and this kind of made me think. She's writing an episode to family, but her sisters are there. Grandpa is there. Homer's dad, but we don't I'm like, who is she writing to? I wonder. I think technically their mom is alive, but I'm not sure if she lives in a nursing home as well. But it kind of made me wonder. I know that's something where if a nerd, say the Simpsons creators are at a Comic-Con and a nerd's like, hey, who was she writing to? And it seems like one of those very how people can obsess. I'm a Star Wars fan as well, and just there's little things where it's well, technically, and you can get all these well, actually. And it kind of got me thinking like that. Well, okay, let's not think about this too much, Cody, because it is a show. This is the first season. Let's just kind of keep going. And I think that's interesting about canon and how nerds and just normal people consume media. There's a lot of people, I think, that don't really think about these things. They're like, oh, I don't need to know how this Marvel power works in a Marvel movie, or how they blew up the Death Star, or how the dilithium crystals work in Star Trek. Instead, they just kind of accept it and oh, that was fun. But then there's people like me probably, and other people that are watching this channel, that are very hey, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. How does this work? And hey, what about the canon? And hey, you contradicted yourself. But I think that's kind of the fun thing about discussing nerd culture and pop culture, and the things that we enjoy. So, okay, we got the main cast, and I've kind of spoke about Homer. I think the other characters are a little not developed either in this first episode. I think the one that we kind of get the most kind of character and sass from is Bart. We kind of get some great lines from him when he's sitting on Homer's lap, and he's I think Homer says, who are you? Or what's your name, little boy? And he's like, Bart Simpson, who the hell wants to know? And stuff like that. And you could see how parents in the 90s that probably grew up, are thinking to themselves, my kids can't watch this? Well, what is going on? And that's one of the things that I always enjoyed as a kid was my cousins, who were I think a year younger than me. He had several brothers, so I had several cousins, but they weren't allowed to watch The Simpsons and Ed, Edd and Eddy and a bunch of cartoons, and I was. And I think it's just a kid's thing where you kind of like to rub it in of oh, I get to watch. You can't watch The Simpsons. And looking back at it now, The Simpsons are so tame compared to Rick and Morty and South Park and BoJack Horseman and all these other kind of adult, even Family Guy. They go way beyond. I mean, I haven't caught up to The Simpsons, so I don't know. Maybe they've gotten a little bit more edgier. I don't think so, because I don't feel like that's the core of what the show is being about the family and being kind of wholesome but funny and jokes. It's just kind of crazy how the world has changed so much. And one of the kind of really interesting anecdotes from the book I had mentioned earlier was how during the 90s, The Simpsons was a culture war issue where people were saying, George Bush, who was running against Clinton, was saying, hey, we need families more like the Waltons than the Simpsons. And it's kind of crazy now to think of the Simpsons as a culture war issue with our current political climate. The Simpsons are so far from people's minds in terms of that kind of aspect of the show. It's just kind of crazy how things have changed. And I guess that's what happens when you're a successful show that's been on for 30 plus years. It's pretty amazing. Lisa has a really good moment where pretty much Patty and Selma, the twin sisters of Marge, are bad-mouthing Homer and just keep saying all these little comments. And Lisa has, kind of this great moment of hey, this is my dad. This is my one male role model. And, you shouldn't, say these things. And she says it in a very elegant way, very smart, intelligent. You can tell her intelligence and how the writers were thinking about that, even though she's in the second grade. So she's 8 years old. And, the aunt's response is, just watch your cartoon show. So it's just kind of funny how it reminds me when I was a kid sometimes, and adults would, I think I always thought about the world differently, and I asked a ton of questions all the time. And I remember sometimes I would ask a grown up or my parents a question, and their eyes would kind of glaze over and just say, just watch your cartoon. And it just seems like something like as a kid that, my I've experienced. So it's always cool when, like, even though it's an animated show, that you can relate. And I think that's, something that's very powerful with the series. So some of the other characters that we get introduced in this first episode are some of the beloved ones that we see throughout the series. We have Principal Skinner. He doesn't really have a lot of lines, but he's pretty much kind of announcing at the beginning the school performances that they're having to go through. Lisa has a really cool like tiki number where she's flipping things, and then Bart in that moment is singing Jingle Bells, but it's the Jingle Bells, Batman smells, Robin laid an egg. And I need to do some more research. I'm assuming this is even before then, but every time, and I'm assuming it's because of this show, I would sing that myself when, I don't know if they still do them, but when I was a kid, they would have like the Christmas, when you were in elementary school, and you would like sing at the auditoriums and stuff. And that I would do that sometimes, or I would just kind of, because I didn't want to be there. So it's just kind of crazy that I still sing that song today to my 16-month-old son, because sometimes, like, if he's having difficulty with a diaper change, I'll start singing that song, like Jingle Bells, Batman smells, Robin laid an egg. And it just is crazy that I hadn't remembered, because like I said, I haven't watched the show in years. So to see that moment was really cool, and I was like, dang, I still sing this song like this. So it's incredible. And like I said, I don't know if it's from this show. It's probably predates the show, but it's just cool that it popped up, in the first episode. I've kind of already kind of mentioned Patty and Selma Bouvier. They are some grumpy characters, and I like how in most sitcoms and most television shows, the husband and even the wife usually don't like the in-laws, right? And I feel like we don't really get, as far as my recollection, any that much of Marge's parents. We get Grandpa Simpson a lot, but I think Patty and Selma kind of replace that for Marge in terms of like Homer, like, oh, I hate my in-laws. Instead, it's like, oh, I hate my wife's sisters, and like, oh god, they have to come, and it's like the worst thing possible. And I think that they had some good dynamic there, and they're able to kind of make fun of Homer, and I think it kind of like makes the episode flow. And they have that, and I still remember, and I'm assuming it's the same voice actress who does the voice, but I think it might be the same as Marge, actually. Sorry, I'll have to look that up, and I'll make sure to mark that. I should have marked them for this episode, but I just didn't think about it. But it has that like, oh, I've smoked like 50 cigarettes a day kind of voice, and it just I feel like we've had family members, or most people have a family member that like, man, they smoke so much that they sound like this. So I think they capture the voice very well for those characters. We had Ned and Todd Flanders. Now at this moment, I'm like, I wonder if they didn't have, Ned's wife and other son really established yet, but we kind of see him. He's very nice. There's this really funny moment where they're Christmas shopping, and Homer is buying really cheap things because he didn't get his Christmas bonus. So he buys like a squeaky toy for Maggie. That's like a dog toy, pantyhose for Marge, and some paper for Bart. And he bumps into Ned Flanders, and like Ned has like 5 or 10 presents, and they all fall. And he's like, okay, well, how are we gonna figure out whose is who? And then he's like, oh, this one's mine, this one's mine, this one's mine. And Homer's just like, shut up, and like keeps walking. And I like how they keep that thread of like Homer hating Ned, even though Ned's like the nicest guy, even though he's like a super religious person. We didn't really, like I said, we didn't get the whole Flander clan, but we got them two. We got introduction to Barney Gumble and Mo Sislak briefly at Mo's Tavern. Those are some of the funnier, like Mo especially is a very funny character, voiced by Hank Azaria. And very slightly with them. Not much with Mo. Just kind of like that typical barf tender feel where, he's like, hey, what's eating you up, Homer? And gives him a candy cane. Barney, though, kind of like helps the plot along where he says, oh, I know, especially, he comes in dressed as Santa. So that's where Homer gets the idea to like, oh, I need to do this to a second job that can help, pay for Christmas for my family. And that kind of montage of the training Santa montage was really well done. There's like almost like this therapist type guy who's teaching them, and they have to say all the reindeer, who are all the reindeer, and how to respond when a kid discovers that they're not really Santa. So it's a really great, I don't know, it's just something that you would see in The Simpsons, right? Where you're just like this very like job that probably doesn't really need a lot of training, but they focus like, oh, he has to train for like a couple days just to be able to do a job where he's just sitting there and kids are telling him what they want for Christmas. So I think that was pretty good. And then also Barney kind of triggers the, hey, they get paid $13 and they're like, what the hell? And they're like, see you next year. And then what he does is he's like, oh, I got this dog at the dog tracks that I know is a winner. They get there. Of course, Homer hears one of the dog's name is Santa's Little Helper, puts all his money on that, and they lose. But in the end, that's kind of the winner anyway, because the guy who owns the dog like pretty much abandons them and says, get out of here, you're a loser. And that's kind of how Santa's Little Helper joins the Simpsons family, which I think is really awesome. A lot of people grew up with pets and animals, and a dog, and by the end it kind of like everyone's like, oh, even though you didn't get your bonus and we didn't have the money, you're able to provide for us. And then we also get Mr. Burns. His voice kind of changes a little bit, but he's a great character, has some great episodes in the future. And then we get the voice of Waylon Smithers over the intercom about them not getting Christmas bonuses. I want to kind of track back to Bart, and I think out of him and Homer have the best character development in this episode. Bart kind of is that rebellious, fourth grader, 10 years old. He wants to get a tattoo. He sees a tattoo in the tattoo display that says Mother, and he goes in and he's like, hey, I want to get a tattoo. The tattoo guy's like, how old are you? And Bart's like 21, and he's just like, get in the chair. And it just reminds me of like that old school tattooing that I'm sure there's still a lot of those old shops, but I feel like tattooing has like progressed so far, and the styles where, I've gotten several tattoos like of anime characters, and mine were all done by artists that, hey, I contacted through Instagram. I've seen their work. It was a unique piece just for me. And no offense to anyone who gets tattoos this way, but I feel like the old school way is like you go into an old school shop and you're just like, hey, I want that one or that one. And they just do that. And I feel like it's progressed so far. So you can definitely tell that this is a show of the time. And, the guy's starting to do the tattoo and he gets to, I believe it says Moth. And Marge runs in, pulls them, and then goes to a doctor who removes the tattoo, and that's why they have no money for the holidays, because she has to use all the money they had been saving all year to pay for the tattoo removal. I think that's all the characters that I think of note. There was some, like I said, the doctor, the tattoo guy, some ones that I don't think we really see again as far as I remember, but if they do pop back up, we'll definitely list them. The next kind of segment I want to talk about is Best Joke. And I have kind of two for this episode. One is Doctor. Now, whatever you do, boy, don't squirm. You don't want this this sucker near your eye or your groin. And this was a hilarious joke. So he's getting the tattoo removed. And it's not only the line is a great line, but it's also Bart's kind of like on the stretcher, right? And then there's this huge laser like remover thing. And, it's going and it's moving, and he says that joke and he's kind of laughing as he's saying it. Like he's like done this before and maybe had some mistakes. And I feel like that's when The Simpsons is the best, when they can have a great line from the writers, and then also with animation, you can do these kind of crazy things that don't really make sense in live action. And honestly, I'm a huge anime fan and cartoon fan. I honestly think I there's some live action shows that I love, but I think animation has the power to do things that they don't ever look cheesy, depending on if it's a good show. You know what I mean? Like if I saw that big laser thing in like a very like in another like sitcom, I'd be like, what? This makes no sense. So animation kind of gives you that power to make things, look faster and look more dynamic and that cartoony feel. I know it's not for everyone, but for me, it's just like an amazing way to tell stories. The next best joke I have is from Homer, and it's a great line. It made me laugh out loud. It's when Santa's little helper like runs towards them, and he's like, "But he's a loser. He's pathetic. He's," and then the dog licks Homer, "a Simpson." And I felt like that deprecating humor of like, hey, he might be a loser, he might be pathetic, but that means that's more reason he belongs with us, And I think that is a great message of the show of all these crazy things can happen, all these different events that affect the family, but in the end they are a family, and that's what kind of makes it so great to watch is like, hey, I don't think most people live in a family or grew up in a family that was like 100% perfect, and there was a lot of mistakes, and maybe you don't even talk to your family anymore. But The Simpsons kind of gives you hope that, hey, even this crazy stuff happens, or Homer does something dumb, or Bart does something bad, or Lisa does something crazy, maybe, that they could still come together as a family. And I feel like that joke kind of encapsulates the whole show in the very first episode, and I think that's fantastic. The next kind of category I want to go over is the MVP of the episode. And I'm going to give it to someone that doesn't technically even appear in the show, and that is the creator, Matt Groening, and then the people that actually got the show done, James L. Brooks, Matt Groening, and Sam Simon. Without these three gentlemen, which are all different points in their career, James L. Brooks is a famous movie producer and director who's won Oscars. Matt Groening at the time was an underground comic that was making a comic strip called Life in Hell, which inspired me to make my own comic called Newbie the Possum. So please check that out on the channel. And then Sam Simon, who worked on shows like Cheers. And I think without all three of them, which they always didn't all get along, that the Simpsons that we know and love would not have been made. And I think they are definitely the MVPs of this episode, just because they are the ones who got it off the ground and made it to the success that it is today. So thank you to all those. Unfortunately, Sam Simon has passed away in 2015, but Matt Groening, I know, still works on the show. I'm not sure of James L. Brooks. I think he's might have taken a step back. I think he's in his 80s. But thank you for creating a wonderful show and helping inspire me to make this podcast under my channel. So kind of the wrap up, like I said, I want to go through every Monday. It will be releasing at 9 a.m. Please leave questions in the comments. Also, you can follow me on social media. I will link my social media down below in the description. I'm mainly active on Threads and Blue Sky, and I have an Instagram as well, but on Instagram I mainly just post my artwork. And it should be for the YouTube channel. It's going to be under Noob News Network, just under a playlist. The Bort Experience, a Simpsons podcast. That's kind of an inside joke. I made a really cool, image for the podcast. Please let me know what you think of it. And then on Spotify, it should be just the Bort Experience, a Simpsons podcast. And like I said, if we have enough interest in it, I'll try to maybe bring it over to other podcast services. But for now, those are the goals. Also, the set. These are old toys from when I was a kid, and some old Simpsons box sets and cups and stuff like that. I'm hoping to have a more permanent space. This is kind of just what I was able to stitched together, so hopefully we'll have a better set in the future. But I just want to thank you. I'm really inspired. I'm really excited about this, and I just want it to, be a fun experience that I think is gonna, I have kind of like a reddish brown beard, and I'm sure by the end of this, if when I make it, it'll be gray. But I hope we can keep enjoying The Simpsons together. Please like and subscribe, and thank you so much for joining me in the first episode of the Bort Experience, a Simpsons podcast. Thank you. Take it easy.